Hi everyone. I think we'll make a start. Oh, no, we won't. The music is coming back in.
Sorry, it was just a pause, but we'll start anyway.
I thought that was the slow fade. Damn it. So anyway, hello everyone. Welcome for everyone joining us for the Yorkshire Soundwoman Network's Level Up in Audio seminar series. I'm Jess. I'm going to be hosting the event today with our guest Amble Skuse. This event series features musical artists and audio professionals presenting and sharing their projects, their ideas, their experiences. So a few things to note before we start. We are recording the session currently, so please refrain from taking any screenshots or any recordings because we will send the seminar out to you to watch again if you want. And if you wish to remain anonymous in the call, that's fine. You can turn your camera off. And lastly, just remember to go on mute whilst we're doing the seminar. Questions. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat section and I can pick them up and ask them as we go. Alternatively, we will have like little pauses in the seminar. If you want to ask the question yourself, that's absolutely fine. So our guest today, Amble Skuse, is a musician and an artist working with found sound, voice and electronic processing. With a focus on gender and disability, Amble explores the ways in which a disabled composer and performer can utilize technology as a tool for composing, improvising, and performing. This includes the use of live instruments, electronics, and body sensor controllers to create soundscapes, improvisations, and live performance pieces. Amble works with a variety of mediums, including oral history archives, interviews, community memories, and found sound to explore identity in different locations. Her work has taken her across the globe, including from Edinburgh to Singapore on a 10,000-mile train journey, to Canada to develop an improvising platform with disabled musicians, to China to explore the role of being in improvisation, and to Croatia to perform with the female coding ensemble OFFAL, or OFFAL. And she is currently doing an artistic residency in Belgrade, where she is right now. I think she's in Montenegro actually. So I'm sure she'll tell us more about that. So Amble, welcome. And could you start off by just telling us a bit about yourself and where you are right now and how you got to where you are, like what's been your musical journey?
Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming. So right now I'm in Montenegro and I'm just here for a few days. I'm doing residency in Belgrade, making a sound walk, exploring the city as a wheelchair user, recording the textures and the sounds and the experiences. I'm also interviewing local disabled people to try and get their voices into the soundscape, because obviously being a visitor to a city is very different from living somewhere full time, especially somewhere like Serbia, where it's quite difficult to move or travel to other cities and to other countries. So that's what I'm doing right now. My sound journey, I started playing musical instruments at school, I think like a lot of people. Started doing a bit of sound engineering at about 16. Did that for a while, studied arts management at undergraduate, carried on doing sound engineering, working at festivals, touring with theatre, and then just got really excited about actually what I could be doing with the sound equipment that I had, and all I was doing really was making it sound nice and turning it up, and felt like it could be a lot more creative than that. So I went and did a master's at Bath Spa in creative music technology. And that got me into Mac's MSP, and I started to sort of figure out what could be done with that. And then the big change really, I was working in like arts production, working at the Arts Council in the southwest of England, and I got really sick. And I think that really was when I started writing music and feeling like, okay, I just need to do this. It was just one of those moments, I think, when you don't know if you're ever going to get well again, and feeling like you do only actually get one crack at things. And I wanted to be a composer, so I just decided to start being a composer. So I sent stuff off and people liked it, and I carried on. And I said I'd do it for a year and see what happened. And then that turned into 2, it turned into 5, and here I am, I'm still doing it. I think 12 years later. So that's sort of it really. I sort of decided I would do it until it didn't work anymore, and it's sort of still working, so I'm still doing it. And through that journey, I've used Max MSP, I've written for string quartets, which you heard earlier. I like to do processing because obviously I used to use a lot of reverb and delay and compression and stuff doing live bands, and I like to just kind of get more creative with that and put that in my compositions. I'm doing a PhD at the moment at the University of Plymouth, and that's sort of roughly around using body sensors and technology as a disabled composer, improviser, performer. And that's covered a lot of projects, but I think we're going to talk about them, so I won't kind of go into them too much. Is that enough? Life story?
Yeah. And what have been some of your challenges along the way? Some of the any obstacles that you've faced on this journey, moving from doing more sound design to then becoming a composer and using technology?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, I think the biggest challenge is just to keep going in those times when it's not coming together, and when you're putting in applications for hundreds of things and they keep coming back as no's, and you have to keep picking yourself up and keep writing more and keep thinking, okay, how can I make this work? What can I do? What will be interesting? Where can I go from here? I'm sort of, I guess I'm really lucky at the moment. I'm sort of, because the PhD has given me a framework, I seem to be in a flow of projects, but that certainly hasn't been the case always. And there's been a lot of kind of, you know, that's the general thing I think that a lot of artists go through. In order to get the work, you have to do a lot of pre-work and liaising with people and project planning and getting partners on board and writing budgets and funding bids, and none of that's paid, and then you don't get funded and you're back to square one and you have to start again, and, you know, picking yourself up every time that happens, I think is probably the hardest thing. I think everything else is kind of surmountable. You know, everything else is like, if you don't have the right gear, then you just use something else. But I think the hardest thing is just that kind of keep getting up, keep doing it when things aren't kind of flowing, and yeah. And yeah, and you know, this is a women's group, so, well, sorry, women and non-binary group. So, you know, there have obviously been challenges to do with gender, especially when I started out. I was a sound engineer doing kind of rock bands in a rock and punk venue. And at first it was sort of okay because I was like 16, 17, 18, and it was all a bit of a laugh. And then as I got into my 20s, it just sort of grinds you down. You know, every single gig you're getting comments, every single gig you're getting, you know, people making comments about your body, people assuming that you're the runner, people asking you to make a cup of tea, people asking you to go to the shop for them. And you just kind of like, you know, it grinds you down. And I think I didn't realize for a long time that I thought I didn't know as much as the others, and I didn't realize for a really long time that actually the guys didn't know anything, and they were just pretending to know stuff because that's what young guys do. And I think for a long time I just sort of thought I didn't know enough. And it was only really I went to The Hague and did the sonology course there. You know, I was just getting young guys who were like 20 saying things like to me, oh, you should do the beginner sound engineering course, you'd feel so much more confident. And I was thinking, I was mixing bands before you were born, what are you talking about? You know, but because I was like a 35-year-old woman in a woolly jumper and I wasn't wearing a black hoodie and smoking spliffs, it just didn't occur to them that I knew what I was doing. And it, yeah, I think that was really the moment where I just kind of kicked back and was like, do you know what, this is nonsense. I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm sick as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So that was really the moment I started getting really shouty about it and being like, no, this is, you know, and I think everybody says like when you get into your 30s and 40s, you have that moment where you're like, I should tell people to F off more often, and I definitely got there. And started getting a bit shoutier and a bit bolder and a bit kind of braver in what I was doing. Yeah. And the disabled thing, you know, is always I don't know, with the disabled thing, you sort of get around it though, like I don't use a lot of gear. Like, I'm not a big gearhead anyway, but like I certainly, like, my studio is literally a laptop, MiMU gloves, a headset, the headset, and maybe like a tiny MIDI keyboard if I have to play something in, but that's literally it. If I can't fit it in a tiny rucksack, I don't use it. Because I think a lot of gearhead stuff is quite sexist and it is quite ableist. And I could go into that for a while. But, you know, the idea that you have to afford all this expensive gear and you have to be in the right cliques to know which plugins to use, and you have to, like, you know, be in the right kind of gang of lads that go to the pub that talk about gear, and you have to earn enough to buy this new synthesizer. You have to be strong enough to carry the bloody things around. And, you know, it's exclusionary for people who don't earn very much. It's exclusionary for people who don't come from, you know, privileged backgrounds. It's exclusionary for people who don't move in the right circles, or for people who don't drink or go to clubs. It's difficult for women to get into those circles. It's difficult for disabled people to, like, use that equipment because it's really heavy, and if it's in a studio, you probably can't get into the studio anyway. So, like, my practice is deliberately, like, if it's not inside my laptop, I tend not to use it because I don't want to have to carry things. I don't want to have to kind of, you know, deal with gear particularly. And so that's informed my practice a lot. It's very minimal in terms of what I use. And I just try and use the parameters of what I've got, as opposed to having to have the most expensive gear or the best gear, or, you know, the newest synthesizer. I think that's so loaded with privilege and barriers that it's just not something I can really be bothered with engaging with. That was a long ramble.
No, I really resonate with a lot of that, especially surrounding gear and knowledge and plugins, and I think there's a lot to be said for trusting your ear and trusting the things that you have and working with them to even be more creative. Because you're just working with what you have, and, like you said, in the parameters of that. Yeah, interesting.
Thank you.
Let's go into the technology side of things.
Okay.
So could you tell us a bit about your work with the EEG sensors and kind of just how they work, and how did you get into using them?
Yeah, it started in China. I was in Beijing doing a residency, and there was a guy there who had just hacked some stuff that he found. I mean, like, this is way beyond what I'm capable of. He'd got some sensors from, like, they have these massive technology markets where you can buy, like, chips for, like, you know, quarter of a penny kind of thing. And he'd got all the stuff, and he'd hacked this thing together, and he was doing this little show outside a little venue in Beijing. And it really resonated with me because, like, I'd started to find that, like, part of my condition was brought on by stress, and the more I was able to rest and the lower I was able to get my stress levels, the better I was in terms of my health, and the more energy I used on stress related and anxiety kind of the more kind of fractured my brain resonances got. And I felt like this was something that I wanted to talk about because it was something that really resonated with my experiences as a human. So he kind of showed me how he did that. And I did make a prototype from his basic thing. And it sort of worked, but I'm just not really good enough. And then I found out about this thing called a Muse headset, which I don't know if this still kind of exists as a possibility, but when it first came out, it's designed, it's like a plastic headset. It's got like 4 sensors on it, and it just measures the electrical activity coming off your brain. And obviously it's really responsive to, like, skin. So if you blink, then, like, the sensors go crazy. Like, it's not a proper EEG headset, but it was designed for, like, meditation, and there's an app that comes with it, and it does work. You know, it can, as long as you don't wiggle your face around too much, you know, as you calm down, the thing changes. What was really nice about it was that it was designed to be kind of hackable and playable, and there was, like, an online community that would help you develop. It's like a little bit of code that just comes through your port, and you send it to your DSP, and it comes through into Max, and you just receive it, and all the numbers spit out, and then you just separate that out into the different sensors. So with the help of that community, I made a max patch that then allows the data to come from the Muse into a max patch. And I used it for a piece called Balancing Act. The idea of Balancing Act really came from this point that I was at where I felt like the more I was getting annoyed about how many women were being left out of the musical canon, the less people would listen to me. And it was like, oh, she's just a crazy woman, you know. And I would try and say to people, like, especially at The Hague, like, you're not teaching any women on this course. And they'd be like, oh, that's just crazy, you know, she's just a crazy woman who's causing trouble. And I would just be like, and it goes back to this sort of concept within feminism of tone policing, of like, you can criticize the hierarchical structure, but you are only allowed to criticize them in a way that they find palatable to listen to. And the more angry you are, the less they're willing to accept your message. And so I correlated that into this piece, Balancing Act. So I have the computer, it's a piece that I made that reads out the names of female composers. And at the same time, I try to read out names of female composers, and I've got the headset on. And the more stressed I am, the more my mic gets turned down, and the more the computer gets turned up and I get drowned out. And the more calm I get, the more the computer gets drowned out and I get turned up. So it's just this kind of idea of, you know, you're trying to be fierce and get your message out there, but you also have to deliver it in a way that is that those who you're criticizing will choose to listen to. I've got a little video of that just explains the max patch. Is that a good time to share it?
Yeah, great.
Okie dokie. 1 second while I figure out this screen share business, and I'll put the video on. Ooh. It wants me to install a device. I am screen sharing. Okay, great. Last time I screen shared, I managed to leave a list of all my passwords up on the screen for everybody to see, which was huge amounts of fun. I'm hoping I'm not doing that today. I don't know if you can hear me actually. Come on. It will not play the video. In the room. Okay. One of those sensors, and so this read the electrical data coming from my brain, and I've isolated one of those sensors. It comes in via Bluetooth to my laptop. I've isolated one of those sensors, and so this image here is the data visualized, which then goes into be split either way and control 2 faders of the volume of the tracks you're going to hear. So there's the sound, the backing track, and the vocal mic here. So you'll see those faders going up and down. This patch here is to do with, it's going to just scroll some text there. That's all it's going to do. So it bangs through this text file here, and this information here tells it how fast to scroll. And when it gets to a certain point, it bangs through the next file, so it will pop up, and this message here will scroll the second file. This box down here is just showing us what data is coming in, whether the Muse headset is connected to the laptop via Bluetooth, and what's going on. So if it's quite unreliable, and sometimes it disconnects, and sometimes it switches itself off, so it's useful to have this window here, so it will come up in red. So if that happens, then it's stopped working and I need to reset it. So that's what you're looking at, if that's helpful. Okay. We're still not starting. We haven't got clearance, have we? No. Yes? No, Yana's not here. Oh, yeah.
The wrong way, yeah.
Oh, hello! I didn't see you. How lovely. So we have clearance?
Yeah.
Okay, fab. Is everybody comfortable and happy where they are? No one wants to fidget, or do you want to come in, sit, stand? Okay, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to do some checks. You can interpret this as part of the performance in the sense that there is a woman doing technological things. Okay. Election failure 121. So I'm I'm just connecting the muse. Hopefully it will. Okay. So you can see the thing on the side now is scrolling. That's my brain doing stuff. Okay.
Abby Holland, Abby Ernstine, Abby Ellis Dotted, Ada Rave, Adele H, Adina Iser, Adriana Halski, Adrian Albert, Agate Max, Anespen, Ayanamoto, Amy Robertson, Bailey, Ed Wonder, Aaron Spooky, Akito Kansei, Albert Wright, Alexandra Rebel, Alex Shapiro, Alexandra Cardenas, Alexandra Fall, Alexandra Gardner, Steve Lee, Alice Moore.
I might leave it there if that's okay. It kind of.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so great to see. I mean, for me anyway, because I'm quite a visual person, it's so nice to hear someone talk about their projects and then actually see it in action. And so that piece was called Balancing Act.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of deliberately demystify the technology. So whenever I do a gig, I try and be like, these are gloves. If I do this, it does that. And it's literally just sending a number from here to here. Because I think a lot of time, especially for women, we feel like technology is something a little bit magical and maybe we don't know enough about it, and and if we don't ask the right questions, then like people might think we're and that guys will make it difficult for us and we don't understand, and there's all this kind of, I don't know, there's lots of mystique around technology, and I think people pretend it's a lot harder than it is, and I think that I feel like that puts women off. And so at the beginning of most of my work, I like to do a little demystification and be like, do you know what? I'm literally just sending a number to this fader, and that fader is going to control the sound. And then I think people can kind of, I think also, sorry, I'm gibbering, but I think also sometimes you go and see an electronic gig, especially if it's something experimental, and you either think, well, that was very clever, but where was the art? Like, I'm really impressed that you can swing a speaker around your head, but I don't know what you're trying to tell me, human to human. Or you go and see an electronic performance and it's just somebody standing on a stage in front of a computer and you're thinking, what are you doing? And I sort of don't want to do either of those things. So I sort of want people to know, A, what I'm doing, and B, why I'm doing it. Because ultimately, like, art is about me talking to you. And the stuff I'm using to do it, it could be a paintbrush, it could be my voice, it could be technology. That stuff isn't really important. It's about what I'm trying to say, I think. And I just happen to use technology, but it's not about the technology, I don't think. And it certainly shouldn't be a mystery to the audience. Like, it's not about showing how clever anything is or mystifying it or making people feel like it's, it really isn't. If it's really not genius, because I did it. It can't be that amazing. If I can do it, you can all do it, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
I wonder if you, still talking about the body sensors, if you could talk a bit about your piece, My Experience of Isolation, because I was having a look at that piece as well, and you can explain this a lot better than I can, but I was really interested in this this cycle of your unconscious signals then affecting your conscious signals, and this you call it the circular nation of isolated thought, and I really liked that. So I wondered whether you could explain a bit about your work on that project.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that sort of circular isolated thought, I think, is really important for people who are isolated a lot. We forget that most of the input we're getting is from our own brain. And so then that voice becomes amplified, and then you respond to that voice and that becomes amplified. And suddenly all of your thoughts are being kind of colored in a certain direction by this, whatever the mood is where you are. Whereas I think if you're out in, and I think now what's really good for us, for, you know, sort of mainly housebound or disabled people, is that the rest of the world has experienced that a little bit as well. And you also know that actually, if you're not in contact with other people, it's very easy to get into a loop of thought that you just wouldn't get into if you were having multiple perspectives coming at you all day from different humans. And so I think that's why I wanted to make peace. The idea is basically, there's a poem that I wrote when I was living in a truck on an island in Scotland, and it was really windy and I hadn't got enough sleep, and I just felt like my brain was shattering into a million pieces. So there's the poem, there's a chopped up version of the poem, which is kind of a shattered version of my thoughts. There's like wind sound, and there's some sea sound, and there's some knocking sound, and all of those sounds are on 6 faders. And those 6 faders are connected to the 6 EEG sensors. So each of the sensors on the headset is controlling one of those faders and creating a mix of those 6 different tracks. Sorry, it's literally just started chucking it down. Can you hear that? Wow. I'm going to shut the window. Sorry, it's really loud. We've been waiting on a tropical storm and it's just arrived. Yeah, and then for the kind of reflexive part of that piece, I had my electric violin and I do live processing with it. So I just run it through Logic. I have a number of channels open. Each of those channels has different processing on it, and then I just mix between the different channels. I usually just use a fader board. So if I hold my fiddle with my shoulder and play open strings or knock it, then I can fade a board with my left hand. It's like super basic, but it works. And the idea is that the brain is, while I'm doing the fiddle, the brain is mixing the soundscape, and what I hear from the soundscape influences what I play on the fiddle. And then the way that I feel about what I've played and what I'm hearing is changing what the soundscape makes. So we become a kind of duet. I like it, between my subconscious and my conscious. Like my consciousness is playing the fiddle part and my subconsciousness is playing the soundscape, and we're responding to each other and creating a kind of a loop each time we do it. It's slightly different as well. So. And that piece is on their website, I think, if anyone wants to have a look. And I think there might even be like a little video of the Max Patch doing its stuff as well, so you can see that happening. If anyone
I have to say, your website is really good. If anyone wants to check it out, there's so much stuff on there. Yeah, you've got loads of content. So yeah, and great explanations of your projects as well. So that was really interesting to read. How was that experience of playing a duet with yourself, or kind of playing with your unconscious thought? How was that? Did that change the way that you approach any of your work now?
I don't think so, because it was kind of something that I have to do in a way anyway, because my health is so impacted by, like even like how much noise I've been around in a day, or like how bright lights are and the kind of people I've been around and all of those things, because I have like really low energy. Anything, even like city sounds, then will reduce that energy. So kind of for 12 years I've been kind of aware of how stimulated my brain is, and when I need to stop that, and what the impact is, that my brain gets really fractured and exhausted, and I can't hear things properly, I can't see properly. And so I don't think it's affected how I make work now. I would say originally I was going to make a video of me doing it, and that was a step too far, like to try and play the fiddle and have the headset and be mixing the thing with my subconscious and make a video of me doing that at the same time was just, it's kind of interesting working with the EEG, because if you're performing, your stress levels are going to go up naturally. And I think there's a video of me doing something in Germany where at the beginning of the performance, like it's just doing this, and I have to just sit on the floor for like the first sort of 5 minutes of the show and just close my eyes and breathe, because otherwise the whole thing's not going to work. So to a certain extent, if you're using the EEG to mix things or to be part of the performance, you need to be in a position where you're going to be able to create a meaningful reading in some way. So I had to cut the video aspect of it, because it was just like my stress levels are all over the place. So that was sort of something I learned, was like actually how, there's only so much you can manage in one performance before it just gets completely like I'm trying to do too many things and everything's just going to explode. Yeah.
That was actually going to be my next question, was what are any like common difficulties that you find when you're using body sensors? But I guess maybe that's one of them, is that if you're feeling nervous, or I mean you can elaborate, but yeah, trying to maintain the calm signals.
Yeah, I mean, with that EEG machine, it's really, really basic. So really, it'll give you a reading like whether you're stressed and when you calm down. But beyond that, it's not that functional. But yeah, calibrating it is like a thing, and there's on the max patch I showed you, there's actually, I can change some of the numbers in that max patch. So if I'm having a day where it just won't get into the band of calibration, I can like shift the reading a little bit and be like, okay, let's read some higher numbers then, because I can't get them low enough. But I think what is nice about it is that it's one of the things that I'm really intrigued about, and I don't think I've quite got there yet in terms of making a piece with it, but is that it's really honest. And in theory, you should be able to make a kind of generative patch that whatever state you're in, it will make something. At the moment, I've just used it as a controller for mixing. But what would be really nice is if it would generate something if I was asleep, or it would generate something if I, however I am on any day. That's kind of, and that links into disability theory about, fluctuating conditions, and saying, look, if you're a performer and you have this mindset that the show must go on, like you have to be ready on this day, you have to perform this particular thing on this particular day, then there's a whole bunch of disabled musicians who are never going to be able to do that. Whereas if you write pieces which say, whoever you are on any given day, that's what you can bring. And if that involves lying on the floor, that's fine. If that involves not coming at all, I mean, we'll talk about this in the opera. But, if that means you can come in and play a whole concerto, that's brilliant. If you come in and you just want to jam 3 notes and then sit down, that's also fine. And being able to think about it from a disability-led point of view, where whoever you are is fine, and whatever you bring is what you bring on that day, and that's authentic. And I think that's why the EEG sensor is quite interesting in that way, because it's authentic. Like I can't fake it. It just is what it is. And that's kind of, I think, how a lot of disabled people live. We're like, okay, well, I'm not up for it today, and it's not going to happen. So I like to sort of try and make things that, in theory, however I am, it will generate something. Having said that, making that Scottish mental health piece, I had to have about 4 attempts at it because I just wasn't well enough to do it. And every time I tried to do it, I would just properly, like, my brain would fall apart and I would just be like, oh. So in theory, it's a thing that says, oh, however you are, you can take part. But in practice, it was too demanding to allow me to give every part. I had to be at a certain level to be able to do that show, make that performance. And again, with the balancing act, I had to stop making it because it was so, it took such a toll on my body, and it took me such a long time to recover from doing it. And the last time I did it in Italy, I only managed about a minute and a half, and then I just had to lie on the floor for the rest of the 13 minutes. And it was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. So it sort of started out being very sort of durational, and it's got to the point where I'm like, okay, I really need some low impact stuff because I can't keep this up. So that, it's all those sorts of explorations, I suppose, about what the body can take and what you can manage.
Yeah. Wow, really interesting. Thanks for sharing those points. Some really interesting points to think about. I'm really excited to see where the next step is going to go with those sensors. Does anyone have any questions, by the way? I know I've been asking loads, but I just want to remind everyone that you're welcome to use the chat function, or if you fancy asking a question, unmuting yourself, then raise your hand or ask a question. I'll just do like a 5-second pause if anyone wants to ask one. Otherwise, I'll ask another one.
Joe,
yeah.
Joe.
Hi, Amble. I just think your work is amazing. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and I've always loved your work, and it's just got better and better and richer and richer. The older you've got, it's really fabulous, creative work. And I think that actually I love the mystery about your work, and I love the magic about your work. I love the sort of intelligentsia about your work and the art in your work. I think it's really, really beautiful. And I don't think that everyone can do it. I think that you can do it because you're an artist. And I really want to share that with you because I think it's really important to me to share that to you as one disabled artist to another, actually. I think it's really, really rich, beautiful, astonishing work, actually. But I want to ask you a question about kind of like, it's the thing about when you're talking about disabled artists and disabled people, and the thing when you were talking about duration and kind of their expectations. So, could you talk about that a bit more, or do you want to share that in private? Or because I think it's really interesting, kind of the way that you're framing kind of duration and expectations and body space. So personally, I'm really kind of, I generally am hyperactive. So I have to put myself down, and I don't have low energy most of the time. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I just like try and keep everything down rather than make it to make an effort to never try and, because everything's up so much. I was just, but the way that you were talking about, you actually write spaces because you is it that you generally feel that disabled people have low energy, or is that what you were saying? Because I don't generally think that that's true. I'm just contradicting you, but
No, it's fine. I think it's I think for me it's about fluctuating conditions, and it's about people being cogs in a machine. And a lot of like Western industrial thought, like, oh my God, I'm literally just gonna like sum up my PhD in like 2 minutes. Here we go. So a lot of Western industrial thought is about industrialization, right? You've got this bell curve of people, and these people in the middle fit into the model that's been created. Like if we need a factory, we need people. So we organize the factory in this way. The people sit here, they make the thing. And anybody who can't do that and sit there for 8 hours is therefore disabled or weird or broken or useless.
Yeah.
Basically how industrialized society works. And I think that happens in a lot of performing arts as well. It's like, this is the play, this is the role, you will be here at this time, the curtain will go up at this time, and I need you to be this character until 9 o'clock. The lines will be the same. I don't care how you feel. I don't care if you're ill. I don't care if you're tired. I don't care if you're having like a freak out. I don't care if you're in pain. You will be the same as you were last night, and you will play this concerto or this character in a play. And a lot of our arts is written in that way. And I think as a composer, I was really keen to explore ways, and this is more to do with the opera than my own practice, but to explore ways that I can say, let's start with who we've got on any given day. So who you are today is different from who you are tomorrow. What I can give you today is different from what I can give you tomorrow. And I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow because I have a fluctuating condition. And that means that I can't be a cog in a thing that has been designed. I can't just fit in and say, yes, I'm a trained violinist. I can play this piece every single day. I can't. And so the idea of, as a composer, not doing that and saying, okay, well, what if we do what we can? And if that's nothing, if actually that is just putting a camera on me lying in bed watching Murder, She Wrote, then that's the gig. Like, it's kind of about upending that idea of society as saying there are things you do, and if you can't do those things, then you're a problem. And saying, actually, the things I do are the things I do. And on some days I'll be brilliant, and on some days I'll be shit, and that's fine. And also working with other disabled people, I don't want to put them under the pressure to say, I need you to be able to play this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's like, okay, you might manage it Tuesday, Wednesday, you might be knackered or distracted, or your kids might be playing up and you might want to do something else, or you might need to, or your arm might be hurting, or, you know.
But you still want them to add to the narrative.
Yeah, like bring who you are. And that's valid. To bring who you are on that day is just as valid. And I think that's part about authenticity and performance. And I think that's also where improvisation is interesting, because it's about what you're bringing today. It's not about what I've told you must play. It's about, okay, well, what do you want to say today? Do you want to say something really melancholy? Do you want to say something really brilliant? Do you want to say something really intense? Do you want to have minimal communication? Do you want to blast through me? Like, who are you today and what do you want to bring? And I think for me that really links into like disabled awareness and disabled pride, to say it doesn't matter how broken I am, I'm still as valid as I was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I understand it now. I felt like I had this, you were portraying kind of like this thing that disabled people are kind of all knackered and down, and actually, you know, they're not, and you're not, and I'm not, and you know, we live healthy, beautiful lives, and so that's but I don't want to, I'm not arguing with you. You know, this is your show, this is, you know, and I want you to be proud, so I'm not saying anything else.
Honestly, I only speak from like where I am, and I'm knackered a lot of the time. But yeah, no, you're right. I shouldn't give the impression that
No, you should do whatever you want to do, Amble. I was just saying what I was, because I was asking a question. So, but it's fantastic work. It's beautiful work, and I'm so proud and privileged to actually hear you talk about your work in this space now at this moment in time. So thank you for sharing it.
That's all right.
Thanks for your question, Jo.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you think this might be a good time to talk about your opera, Amble?
Yeah, you can. Do you want a question, or shall I just go for it?
I think you should go for it, and maybe just tell us, just tell us about the project and how it started and what the ethos is behind it, and then perhaps you've got a little video clip as well. That'd be
video. Yeah. It started out, I was doing a piece with the Power Orchestra, and I wanted to make a soundscape of different disabled voices. And so I interviewed a bunch of disabled people, and it honestly, I think it saved my life. Just that period of about 6 months of having like hour-long chats with people I didn't necessarily know, but just being able to ask them really the kinds of questions you don't ask people when you just meet and go, oh yeah, how are you? Oh, da, 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 da. It was like, how do you think society sees you, and what are the limitations, and just like, why do you think society reacts to disabled people like that? And just like, so I had these questions, but we actually just kind of had lots of chats, and it was awesome, like meeting all these amazing disabled people. And then I made a few songs for some of the singers from Power Orchestra to sing about what does it mean to be a human being, using the lines and the articulations and the pitches and the rhythms of the people's speech. So I notated like little snippets of audio, and then we made a soundscape as well. And then we tried this improvisation idea, which was about, it wasn't the whole Power Orchestra. I think it was about 5. And it was just about giving them a kind of vague chordal structure, but allowing them to bring what they wanted to bring on the day. And ideally, that would have become a piece for the Power Orchestra. As I was making it, the Power Orchestra went through this huge change, and it sort of became apparent that it wasn't going to fit within their new structure. So I was looking for a new home for this small piece, and one of the interviewees was Toria Banks, who runs Hera, which is an opera company. It's female-led, disabled-led opera company, and they focus on opera made by women. And Toria is a playwright and a director and a librettist, and is remarkably talented, and also has ME, and also runs her own company. And honestly, I don't know how she does it. And we were chatting, and she said this could be an opera. I was like, well, okay, this is not a thing I do. I don't know anything about opera. I'm not that, massively into it. But we sort of came to the conclusion that we could do anything we wanted and call it an opera, because opera is like not owned by anybody. And then I think we were chatting over tea about a PIP assessment, and somebody had said if we wanted the recording from their PIP assessment. So I don't know if anybody there might not know actually what a PIP assessment is. When you apply for money when you're disabled, it's called the Personal Independence Payment, and it's taken over from the Disability Living Allowance. And there was like a huge problem when they changed from DLA to PIP. They basically changed the rules. So people who used to be disabled suddenly found themselves no longer categorized as disabled, not because their bodies had changed, but because the category changed. And the assessments were being run by a private company, and the private company were also had targets for the amount of people they had to refuse. And what was happening was that people were finding out that the assessors had lied about what happened in the assessment. And so then people started recording their assessments, and then they brought in rules that said, oh, if you record them, you have to do it on a cassette tape. It has to be 2 cassette recorders which are identical, so that we can have a copy and you can have a copy. They have to be battery powered because we can't PAT test them. And it was just that, like, where the hell am I going to get 2 battery recorded tape recorders? It was just ridiculous hoops to jump through in order to make sure that you were treated fairly. But anyway, so this ended up with people having recordings of their interviews, and then you can use that recording at a tribunal. If the government turn you down for PIP and you get the transcript and you find that there are lies in it, you can then present the recording as evidence. But you have to get permission to record in advance, and if you don't get permission to record, then you can't use the recordings as evidence. But we also found out you have to get a recording of them giving you permission to record, because quite often they will deny that they gave you permission to record even if they did. So you have to record them giving you permission to record so that you can then go and record them. So they'll lie to you, and then you take them to court, and then you try and use the tape to prove that they were lying. They say you never had permission to record, and then you play the recording of them giving you permission to record, and then you can use the recording to prove that they're lying to get your PIP. So we were talking about this. And it's one of the reasons a lot of people don't apply for it, or people give up, because it's just hideous. Like, how do you deal with that? If you're already cognitively impaired, if you're already depressed or anxious, if you don't have support, it's horrific. And somebody had gifted us a recording of their PIP interview and the transcript, which had been typed up. And Toria said, this needs to be an opera. And so that's basically what we did. Everything in the show is verbatim. Nothing is made up. There's recordings of the person talking to the tribunal on the phone saying they're lying about me. There's recordings of the PIP interview. There's recordings of people claiming that they haven't been interviewed. There's a bit of text to speech where we've used some of the emails and letters from the DWP, and we've got like a computer voice to read it out. And then the chorus sections, because that's so heavy and horrific, and this woman is repeatedly humiliated and not listened to, and her answers are skewed and twisted. So the chorus sections are then the recordings of the interviews with the disabled people, and allowing their voices to speak and talk about their community, how they approach life, how they support each other, how they view the world, how society views them, and gives a much richer tapestry than just these little boxes like, can you lift a cup? Can you chop a vegetable? Can you, I don't know, do you have a toilet? Like these really stupid, and the choruses kind of open it out to this really rich philosophical inquiry actually to what is it to be disabled, and why do we even think of some people as disabled and some people not disabled, and what does it mean to be a human being, and where do we draw the line between somebody whose life is worth living and somebody whose life isn't worth living, and why do we value some humans over other humans, and those massive philosophical questions. So we try to kind of give space to that, and so we wrote the opera, and it was weird actually. We always intended to make it remotely because I just don't have the energy to go to a rehearsal room and rehearse. I could do it for like a day and then I'd be in bed for a week, and that's not very productive. And I don't want to be that ill either. So we intended to make it remotely. We put the funding bid into Creative Scotland to make it pretty much remotely. We got the funding, and then a week after there was the lockdown. And Creative Scotland contacted us and were like, how are you going to change your plans? And we were like, I don't think we have to. I think we're good. So it was really weird because it was like, it would have been this really niche kind of disabled project if there hadn't been a pandemic. And then because there was a pandemic, it was like, oh yeah, we're making an opera remotely. And so is everybody else doing everything remotely on at the same time. So we rehearsed over Zoom. We sent recording equipment to all the musicians and the singers. They couldn't have technicians with them because everybody was shielding, because we were all disabled. And so we had to teach them over Zoom how to use the recording equipment, how to get good recordings. We had to get them to like do tests and send them to us, and then get them to adjust things and send more tests. And yeah, it was hard. It was so hard. Trying to like make an opera over Zoom. And then as the composer, I then ended up being the mixer and the master, and trying to make people sound like they're in the same room, when one of them is in rural Oxford and one of them is in central London, and there's got like neighbours walking around and car alarms going off, and have to try and make these two people sound like they're singing to each other. And then the instrumental parts are again using the improvisation technique. So we gave the musicians kind of modes to use, and we told them like the mood of the section, like this is a really dark section or this is a really happy section, and then we just got them to respond. And we also played them the samples of the people talking, and if they wanted to respond rhythmically or melodically to the rhythms and the melodies of the speech, then they were free to do that or not, because we wanted it to be, I suppose we wanted to decentralize power as much as we could. And obviously we had to tell the singers what to sing and when to sing it and what notes to sing and what rhythm to sing it. So then within the choruses, we tried to make it as decentralized as possible. So when you hear the soundscapes, they've all been triggered by Clarence Adu, who is paraplegic. So he has no movement apart from one shoulder and his head. And we made a sampler that he could play by blowing down a tube. And it has like a number of buttons on the screen, and he moves the cursor with his tongue to the button and then plays it. So he's in control of who says what and when and how many times. We gave him the quotes for each section, because obviously we wanted to have a mood and a theme for each chorus, but he decided which ones were used and in what rhythms and in what order. And then the musicians responded to that. And we also had, God, I'm rambling. We also had an audio describer, because Sonia, who plays clarinet, is deaf and her hearing varies. So we had the audio describer listening to what Clarence and Steph, the harp player, were doing, and then writing almost kind of poetry, like harp descending melodically, sounds like a waterfall, happy place. And then the clarinet would play back a phrase which she responded to that text. So the audio describer was not just literally saying somebody moves left to right, she was having a creative input. So we very much kind of regard her as one of the performers as well. And that allowed Sonia to kind of respond creatively to what Steph was doing. And because we'd given them a mode to play in, we knew that whatever they played was going to work harmonically. So we didn't need to worry about pitch too much. It was more mood. I'm going to stop talking now, because that was a lot. I think that's everything.
No, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Like such a cool take on an opera as well. Like, you know, with the use of the chorus, you know, bringing the truth, or like, you know, other voices. Is there any way that we can see this? Is it somewhere?
It currently is on a private link, because the opera company is still trying to get it into festivals for next year. So I can't show you the whole thing. My approach with most of my stuff, as you've seen from my website, is I just whack it up, and if people want to listen to it, that's fine. But because they're trying to sell it to festivals, we can't then have it free, because festivals won't buy it. But I can play you a little if you'd like.
Please, yeah, I'd love to.
Time, like maybe, how much shall I play?
A couple of mins.
Okay. Right, I'm going to try this old screen sharing malarkey again. Here we go.
Yeah. So that's probably like 5 or 6 days a week where I won't leave the house. did you get to assessment today? My friend brought me.
I'm not disabled, I'm fine, I'm not disabled, I'm fine, I'm not disabled, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm not disabled, I'm fine, I'm fine. Maybe I'm actually disabled.
Chronically ill people around me were saying, no, that word is terrible, that word means, no, this word means.
For me, it's kind of like, it's not a bad thing to be disabled.
It's quite difficult to admit to yourself that you are disabled. And there's a whole sort of way of being and a way of thinking.
I mean, they use phrases like catastrophic disability.
I was really scared to have to it was like, I didn't know how to take on all of that, like
going, no, disability isn't a dirty word. This is a thing that you can grab with both hands and use to make your life better.
Be able to welcome these, on some level, fairly terrible things into your life.
It's not a positive experience, but it can give positive things.
Disabled people are mega experts on resilience. It's fuck resilience.
It was this, superhuman, on a pedestal view of disability.
I have an impairment, but I don't have a disability because that thing does not exist.
It's fuck resilience.
I am disabled in my career, in my economic chances.
Be able to welcome these, on some level, fairly terrible things into your life.
Holding joy and despair in tension.
We get on with it because we don't have the choice.
Because there are just certain little nuances about our existence.
Not great, but at the same time, it's not a tragedy. And I think that we like to sort of see disability as a tragedy, as like a tragic story.
Is the old school narrative of vulnerability, which is deeply harmful to disabled people.
Because my life is never going to be ordinary. I can't do ordinary things. My life is never going to be ordinary. I can't do ordinary things.
Are you able to make yourself a piece of toast? No, 'cause I can't eat wheat. And are you able to ever chop up your own vegetables? Some days. Are you able to lift pots? Some days, maybe 2 days. Reaching into the cupboard and getting the pot makes my arms quite tired. And then once there's stuff in the pot, I couldn't lift it. Not on my worst days. I don't eat then. On my worst days, I probably wouldn't eat a meal. You'd eat snacks. What sort of snacks do you like? Usually fruit. Bananas are really easy. Apples are quite tiring. Usually fruit. Bananas are really easy. Apples are quite tiring. Do you use?
I'll stop there. Oh, she's still going. Hang on, stop. Okay, they've gone away. They didn't want to stop.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a fascinating project, and also really beautiful. So thank you for sharing all of the input that went into it, and it's really nice to actually hear and see parts of it as well. Yeah, I really hope that it gets accepted into some festivals, because I think it's a really important piece of work that people should definitely see. So yeah, really good luck. I really hope that gets out there. Does anyone have any questions regarding that specific project? Because I've definitely got some other ones to ask about the MiMU gloves that we're going to move on to in a minute. But I just wondered if there's any quick questions regarding that project, or if you want to put any in the chat section. That that's also fine. But as we have about 20 minutes left, I would love to ask you, Amble, what you're up to right now, and about your work. How did you get involved working with these MiMU gloves, and could you tell us a bit about them and how they work?
I can indeed. So I was super lucky. There's a guy called Chris Halpin who is big on the disabled music scene, and he's been using MiMU gloves for a long, long time. And his situation basically is he has cerebral palsy, and that means that he doesn't always have the flexibility in his hands that he wants to. And he found that, you know, playing an instrument, again, it's like that industrialized thing, like you have to fit your body to the instrument. And if your body no longer fits the instrument, then you're kind of screwed. And what he found with the MiMU gloves, because you can calibrate them basically. So if that's your reach one day, but that's your reach the next day, that's fine. You just adjust the calibration. So with MiMU, the gloves respond to your body, and you program them to wherever. You know, if you can lift your arm up here and down there, then that's fine. If you can only lift it that much, then you just calibrate it to that much. So the instrument changes depending on what your body can do, which means you can be different every single day. It means you can have spasms. It means you can have a degenerative condition. You can get better. It's adaptable, which is like the inverse idea of the kind of industrialized, you know, you must fit the thing or you are disposed of kind of. So Chris loves his gloves very much, and he organized a project with MiMU where 5 disabled musicians would get a pair of gloves and a residency, which I applied for, and I was like super lucky to get it. So the other people are Eeg Machine, Ben Lunn, who's based in Scotland, Rylan Gleave, who's also based in Scotland, big up the Scottish contingent, and Andrea. I don't know what Dre's surname is, that's terrible. So Dre is a mime artist, which is really interesting, and Rylan uses signing, and so they wanted to see how you could use signing with the gloves. Ben is a composer and a conductor, so he wanted to use conducting. And Eeg Machine, or Nonto as is her first name, she wants to do AI, and she does a lot of live performance stuff. So they're the other 4 doing it, and I would definitely encourage you to look on the residency webpage and look at what they're doing. My stuff, I think, again, it was about being able to be different every day. It was about being able to control things, you know, have the gloves mapping what my body's doing. So maybe if I'm sleeping or I'm resting, but also on these sound walks, I've been mapping cities and like feeling contours of things and then using data from that to be a part of the soundscape. So that's kind of what I've been looking at. So far, I've mainly been working with video. I did a little thing in Belgrade last week, which was like a work in progress sharing. And I could show you a wee bit of that video if that's helpful. Okay, see if I can do it this time. I'm technical genius, see. Here we go. Share. Belgrade show.
City in a different way, because I feel all the textures of the paving and the cobbles and the concrete and the tarmac, and I feel that through my body. And I also have like a sound world that goes with that, which you don't get if you don't use a wheelchair. And you get, to a certain extent, if you use a skateboard or a bicycle, you will have had these sounds in a similar way. So I'm using that, and I'm wearing these gloves, which are black, so you might be able to see them, but they're called MiMU gloves. And for this performance, they're registering whether my arms are up or down. And hopefully you can see on the video when my right arm goes up, then you get like a live feed of this room. So that's me in white there. And when the arm goes down, you get more of the textures of Belgrade. But there's still a kind of shadow of me there. And then when I put my left arm up, there's imagery from Belgrade children's homes of disabled children, And there was a report just released this year about the way that disabled children are looked after in Serbia, and it's a really difficult topic to talk about without doing more research, but there's sort of various international charities. Basically it's underfunded, and the people looking after the children don't have the resources to allow the children to move freely, and so they're sort of tied up with bandages for their own protection, so that they don't fall out of bed or roll over or, you know, get into dangerous situations. But the images of children being tied up with bandages I thought was a really powerful image, because for me bandages are about healing and support and care, but seeing children tied to beds with bandages kind of was really shocking, and it inverted the idea of care in some way. But I do want to emphasise that it's not a deliberate torture of the children. It's absolutely down to a lack of resources and a lack of staff and a lack of any other option to look after deeply disabled children with complex needs. So yeah, it's difficult to talk about as a very privileged white Western disabled person with a lot of personal autonomy and freedom, and it's almost not my place to talk about it, as I'm not a Serbian, but it was just something that I came across that I felt was really powerful, and potentially I can talk about it in my work, but I'm not quite sure how yet. So this is a work in progress to sort of explore those ideas. And I've made a little soundscape as well for you, which I'll start now. Bandages in it. Oh, there we go, bandages. I'll stop there. Is that okay? Could everyone follow that? It's just a mobile phone video from the gallery.
Yes, mesmerizing. Steve, I didn't realize that you could use them to trigger kind of visuals as well. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's like the EEG, so you just pull the data out of it on a DSP and send it into a port, like in this case it was like port 9000, and then it spits it out port 9000 in Max, and you attach it to anything you want to. So I literally just can put it, so Max has a section called Jitter, which is about video. I don't really know much about it, but I know how to mix two videos together. So I just put it on a fader which mixed between two videos, and then so one arm was mixing two videos and the other arm was mixing another two videos, and just a really simple patch, but it's sending out data 0127 0127, and then I'm saying to Max, like, if it says 127, then fade this fader up. If it says 0, fade it down. And so it's kind of, you know, it's kind of just plumbing, really. You're just plumbing one thing into another thing. But yeah, so in theory, they can control anything that you can control in a computer. They just send data and you have to decide where to put it.
Wow, fascinating. So you're going to be doing your sound walk, or have you already done your sound walk in Belgrade?
Haven't made it yet. I think as a result, that was like a work in progress. And as a result of that, I really felt like actually it couldn't be my voice on this sound walk, because as a white woman with an electric wheelchair, I'm in such a privileged position. And it's not for me to go to Belgrade and go, hey, your pavements are shit. Like, I don't mind doing that in Germany and in France and in the UK, but doing it in Belgrade just feels really like that's not okay. So we've slowed things down a bit, and I'm interviewing disabled people from Serbia, and I'm going to use their voices talking about their experiences of being disabled in Serbia, because that feels more representative and more like I'm giving a platform to the people that really should have that platform, and not just me waltzing in and telling everybody what to think. So yeah, like the dynamic's been really different on this one. It's been very like I needed to be aware of punching down and punching up, and actually it's not important what I think of Belgrade, but what is important is how the disabled people of Belgrade are treated and listened to or not listened to, and those are the people who need to be in the sound walk, I think. So I'm not going to get it finished by the time I go, but I think that's okay, because I think it needs to be right. Yeah, so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for sharing. And I guess we can kind of stay tuned, stay following you and kind of the MiMU website or that kind of thing to see how that project turns out.
Yeah, do you want me to find it and stick it in the chat, or?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, let me find it.
At some point. Yeah, I'd love to see how the project turns out, and to follow up what everyone else is doing as well.
There we go. That's the residency page. Boom, there you go.
Lovely, thank you. I just wanted to open up the last kind of 5 minutes before we close. Just anyone else have any other questions about Amble's work, or anything you're up to, Amble? Just to kind of open it up for any more questions at the end before I ask some more.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be questions, it can be comments, observations, criticisms. It's fine. It's, you know.
Okay. So can I ask a question about the technology? And so what did you think about? I mean, the MiMU gloves are really expensive, like really expensive, like hugely expensive. So and then you're working with these kids from orphanages. Is that, I mean, what was that? Kind of what the two together, does that bring up any challenges for you as an artist? And were you asked to work with them, or was that so how did you negotiate that as an artist?
Yes, absolutely. I feel very privileged here in Belgrade. I've got an electric wheelchair. A lot of people don't even have wheelchairs. A lot of people who are not mobile just have to stay in their houses. Even if they had wheelchairs, they wouldn't be able to use them because the pavements are so bad. I am very aware of my privilege in Belgrade. Also, as a tourist, as a visitor, people help me if I get stuck. And from what I've heard from other local disabled people, they are asked, like, oh, why did you leave the house in the first place? You're just getting in everybody's way. Like, don't be so stupid. You know, it's really, or why are you bringing shame on your family? These sorts of comments. So I'm very aware, like, this is why I want to do the soundscape with actually them telling their story, because I can go in and go, oh yeah, you know, Belgrade's got some potholes, but that's like missing the whole story. The MiMU gloves, yes, they are exceptionally expensive. I don't even know how much they are. We were given them as the residency, and holy shit, like, to be given something like that is just mind-blowing. And again, yes, I'm aware that just my laptop is worth more than people earn in a year in Belgrade. And it really does make you think, you know, okay, shit, I have to do something important here. I have to use whatever platform I've got. I can't keep poncing around and being arty. There are people who are part of my community that I have a connection to, and I owe them, because
I was going to ask you kind of like, what's your message? So you've got these hugely expensive like pieces of technology and these images. So kind of what's your message?
I don't know yet. I think this is something I really need to grapple with. It really, really do, because as you say, that's absolutely cool. And I think in that video, like at the end, we have like a Q&A session, and I'm basically grappling with that and saying, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if I'm exploiting these kids. I don't know if I'm helping these kids. I don't know if I'm just here for my own amusement. I need to know that what I'm doing here is right and is ethical, and that I'm not just exploiting these people's pain to highlight my artist's career or have a great time traveling. Like, it has to be, I don't know where that line is yet, and I think that's why I didn't want to just make Soundwalk and leave. So I've said to the gallery, like, I'm going to need time to figure this out.
Yeah,
because I can give them some of my fee, and I intend to. We've had conversations about that, because I'm getting paid to do this, and shit, I don't need that money like they need that money.
No, but it's really incredible image. The really powerful images, but it's really strange watching it. No, I'm, you know, just really weird watching that information coming through, like, as a
really effing weird doing it.
very, very, really very strange. So, yeah.
What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, yeah, I completely agree with you, and it is very weird. I feel very privileged. I feel slightly uncomfortable, but I also feel like I need to do it justice.
Maybe that's
But also, I can't fix the problem of disability in Serbia.
No.
You know, so it's I can't give every one of those children a home. I can't give the children's homes enough resources to not treat the children like that. There are international charities working with them. There's been an international report written recently. So maybe I could do some of that. Maybe I can donate some of the proceeds of the opera. I don't know. But yes, using something that is ridiculously expensive and futuristic and privileged, and then working with the orphanages is like the most bizarre kind of two worlds colliding experience. But I'm really glad that I landed here, and I didn't just kind of start using them kind of willy-nilly. Like, this is like the first sort of proper project I've done with it, and it's made me go, oh, okay, check your privilege. You have to not get up your own bum here. It's really hard. It's not worries me at all. Like, I'm getting paid to be here, and I've got these amazing fucking gloves, excuse me, but you're right, I have to do it properly.
But I just wanted to say that. Cool.
Yeah,
thanks, Jo. No, really interesting question. Sorry, Amble. There's such interesting questions, and really, really important to think about. And I think the fact that it's really interesting and insightful to see you at this stage of your project, you know, because it is a whole process. That's the art as well, isn't it? Like, the whole process that you go through and the learning that you go through. And it's really interesting to see you at this point in the project. And they're really like deep and difficult questions. And, you know, you're there right now. So obviously you're you're experiencing it all. And I think it's, you know, even the fact that you're being so honest and you're thinking about it whilst you're there is, you know, sounds like you're on the right track. So no, it's really interesting to hear all about the process. So I think we're going to have to kind of wrap up here. Thank you so much, Amble, for sharing your wisdom and your process, and for being so honest and open. And yeah, I feel like I've definitely kind of really learned a lot, and it's so nice to yeah, just hear about your projects and the thought behind it. So I would definitely recommend to have a browse on Amble's website, because there's so much stuff on there and so many links to videos, and just like all of the blog stuff that you've written as well is great. So yeah, is that the kind of best way to find out what you're up to?
Yeah, I think so. Like, young people ask me if I've got a YouTube and an Instagram, and I just sort of look blankly. I do have an Instagram, but it's mainly cats and beaches.
Nice.
And I've managed to lock myself out as well. So yeah, look on my website, Facebook and Twitter. I put stuff up there as well. But thank you so much for coming, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to gibber about stuff. It's like, yeah, super great to have a platform and to share the insides of my brain with other humans. Thank you.
No, thank you. And yeah, thanks everyone else for joining. Hopefully
it's Friday night,
October. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Don't make sure you read the chat section, Amble, because lots of people have been praising you there. So yeah, make sure you read that. And yeah, just from Yorkshire Sound Women Network, like, thank you, and see you in October for the next seminar. And there's also a PRS session coming up about how to earn royalties. So keep an eye out for that. So yeah, I'm gonna end the session now. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening, and yeah, see you soon. See you next time.